Just super quick background. I'm the VP of engineering at Bolt. Bolt's a VC firm that specializes in investing in very early stage startups that are building some physical product. It's pretty unusual that a VC firm has an engineering team. So that's kind of one of our unique features at Bolt is that we have senior engineers on staff that work alongside portfolio companies with their product development. So we do some combination of advising and then industrial design, mechanical, electrical engineering, and some firmware development with people, and really just specialize in marrying that part of product development with the business side of the companies as they grow and their fundraising milestones and things like that. Worked on a bunch of different products at Bolt, from medical devices to consumer product to some robotics things, aerospace, automotive, things like that. So pretty diverse industry-wise. Before I was at Bolt, I was at another hardware startup, Pearl Automation, where I ran the product group. We were building aftermarket cameras for cars. I worked at Apple for a number of years with the new product teams and the iPod and iPhone groups. So I did some very high volume stuff as well too. So just a lot of different roles in kind of consumer and some B2B hardware startups. I think I can hopefully help out with kind of relevant questions there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. And we're super appreciative that you're joining us today. So I think we should get started so everyone has as much time as they can. First up is Null Modular. So Yijin and Megan, if you want to introduce your project, and if you have any specific questions for Tyler, you can start with those. And I'll try to keep your time to like 5 minutes for your portion, and then we'll pass it off to Tyler.
And I did look over everybody's like project page on the website too. So
yes. Are you guys familiar with modular synthesis? Just kind of want to get a vibe of that first.
Yeah. I have a Eurorack.
Amazing. Okay, great.
I like solder kits myself, and yeah, so I get it. I deeply understand what you're making.
Okay, great. Because that's kind of the first challenge that we have to deal with. Is a lot of people, even if they're musicians, haven't really made that jump into modular synthesis. We are not necessarily kind of like joining the arms race to create any of the actual tools or the oscillators and sound sources, but we're building a case for them. So our whole idea of kind of disrupting that kind of community is bringing modularity to the actual cases themselves. But with the Hackaday challenge specifically, we're developing a whole new line of case accessories. So kind of inverting the design process rather than it being an idea of identifying a need and then building a product based off of that specific need. We're involving the community to communicate what those needs are during the entire process itself. So all the way from where we got the first idea for our first feature, which is a light like LED strip. If Megan, you want to speak to that?
So what we wanted to solve was the initial issue of playing gigs in the dark, so headlamps and all of that. The little bit of background of the case was that a friend of ours had approached me as a designer, like, oh, can you please make me a case? And his first thought was like, I just need a box. I'm like, well, you wouldn't really just need a box. Like, what does that mean? So I started doing a lot more research and just found that there's so many holes in the needs of what even just entering the modular community. And one of the biggest things is barriers of entry is the cost of starting all that up, and the case itself being, even though you don't want to be spending too much money on the case, you want to spend more money on modules. So trying to combat that with just our whole like vertical process of being able to fabricate everything in-house. Little background for me is that I'm an architectural designer, and for the past 2 years I started my own little design firm and have all of fabrication equipment and everything in-house. So that's sort of how we've sort of come to where we are now is this next iteration of product development in this realm.
So we actually developed the case about 2 years ago. And of course, like within that entire process, we've been talking with artists that we've kind of created a little cult following of artists that kind of use the case or the prototypes of it. And they've been giving us feedback in terms of how to modify it, things that they're really looking for in terms of playing live as well as in the studio. So all of that is kind of giving the fuel to this project. And we're ready to come to market with the case by the end of the summer. So that's something that is really exciting for us, but we are using this challenge to kind of light a fire in terms of helping us develop a process around developing the accessory line, or just the process of having feedback with our community of modular heads as well as different artists in LA. But we want this to really kind of be a voice to the community, in the sense of, if you guys aren't familiar with modular synthesis, it's such an empowering form of making music where you control every single aspect of what sounds like you. And what we saw as really big red flags is the fact that, like, you build a case or a system over the course of years, but you're still working within the confines of a case where, like, maybe there's around 5 options available that pretty much everyone in the space uses. So we thought, hey, why can't we, if there's so much innovation and a whole new renaissance that's happening, especially in Eurorack modular synths, why can't we bring that to what holds it and what kind of allows you to grow even more beyond the sounds that you're growing with. So that's kind of like our intention. Right now, we're very much ready to put out the case, but we're very much in development mode, or you could say like concept stage of what this new kind of arm or extension of what our project is. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And it's flat packable.
And it's flat packable. So there's certain, like, there's no case that's necessarily like mass produced at that scale, or in that sense. So for us, we're definitely hitting a lot of notes that aren't necessarily being touched on within, especially the modular space. So we're excited to kind of bring that forward. But in the long run, or in the long-term vision, we're developing a space in downtown, potentially, but we're building our own like studio, as well as like fabrication studio, as well as like gallery space, very similar to how Supply Frame kind of has their open gallery in the front. So we're trying to really centralize all of this information, as well as like procedures within the design house that Meghan is starting up. But this is our MVP, our first product coming out.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. Any particular feedback I could help provide?
Yeah, I mean, for us, a really big question that we had was, we're trying to conceptualize like the entire pipeline in terms of what this product is going to, or like this line is going to really do. We're really excited about the potential of Hackaday kind of open sourcing that conversation as our first kind of, you could say, introduction. But outside of that, this is our first time actually building kind of a product line in general. So just conceptualizing what that would look like in terms of, do we do that in the very front? Do we do that right now while we're building out the first feature? Or should it be something where we should plan ahead, like maybe a year out, and have a line of them, and like bring in different like thought leaders at this point of the stage, or build the first one, make sure everything is smooth, and then start that kind of more projection sort of planning.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a tension when one of your main product features is modularity, or being able to adapt things in the future, because that you have to paint a picture of like what, in which ways it will be modular in the future, so there's something more tangible for people to actually imagine and want.
Exactly. So that's kind of like the first thing that we kind of have to be communicating, right? Is the fact that this is going to grow with you. It's not something where we're just creating something and then that's the end of the story, right? So,
and I think you want enough tangible examples, even if they're still sort of like coming soon things, that it tells the story of where it's going. But it still has to deliver lots of value with the very first feature, or else that wheel won't start turning, because people really won't necessarily buy it because it'll be valuable in the future. Like, it needs to be super valuable today. And so like I hear you, like with the LED light bar might be that magic feature to start with. That's really going to get people going. And then they're sort of excited for the coming soon things. But you really have to nail it even with that first feature to make sure that you're still offering a ton of value versus other cases. I think the other thing that's important to think about is just how many customer touch points you have. It is sort of a fundamental challenge, I think, with the space, like how long people stay attached to their cases and how long it takes them to build up a rack. So it's not like they're going to be buying a new case very, very often. And so, you kind of, I think, want your strategy for what the modules are that you add on to be something that where people experience that value pretty frequently. So if it's something that they're taking on and off for specific gigs or for specific like environments they're carrying around the case, or different pieces of music that they're playing, something that has high frequent like touch points where they really get to experience that modularity, not just like once every couple of years once they decide to like add on to the case. Those things may still be really valuable, but I think it'll be kind of strategic for you to pick some features for the second, third things where people really get to like experience the taking on and off and adjusting it frequently.
Yeah, and that's definitely a part of how we're conceptualizing, especially the strategy is, and that's also the benefit of the community is that people want that information. They want to know the journey and the making of, and so it's us kind of conceptualizing, especially the first one. We're planning on doing like a live showcase to actually show the case in action and then also learn from artists using it then. So we're trying to have different touch points, but also like different moments where we could actually like really slice in and see what people are thinking about what we're building. So we're starting off with lighting it up. And we'll see how that goes. Right now,
we also have a plan for 3 different phases. Right. One being fully integrated into the case, one being more of an accessory attachment to it, and the third being the module that we can actually have in the case
to manipulate like the parameters. So you could kind of take the one feature and expand it in a lot of ways. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do with every single new offering.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see if there is an accessory that somebody might use with their existing setup just to get them into the system and like appreciate
exactly
the products and get them involved with the community and the dialogue. Because there is also maybe a little bit of a chicken and egg dynamic that's difficult, where like asking someone to like switch if they have an existing rack to like switch to your rack is a really big ask. And so you're almost like your market are people that are like looking to start a new rack, but then they appreciate the nuances of the modularity. So you're already sort of in like a super user segment, but you're trying to catch even the smaller segment of people like that are starting a new rack.
Exactly. Everyone is super particular about their system.
That's why, like, if it's light, then it has to be, that's why we have like, okay, there's 3 different options for you. Like, one that's like, you're starting from scratch, or one where, you can actually just have it like external and just attach to it, or one that's actual module where you actually want to do more with it.
Right. I think the community focus is really smart. I mean, it's potentially the experience of using your product should almost be as much about participating in the community and the feedback loop and everything than just the physical products themselves too. So if you bought an accessory, that should really just be kind of like the entry point to being a participant in the whole community, and maybe that's what really hooks you more, even just as much as the widget itself.
Yes, exactly. Sure. Do you have any like insights on kind of finding like unique user stories, or like would you say kind of what we have activating where it's on the Hackaday page, as well as kind of doing these like live engagements and activations? That's where we're using as kind of like our way of organically getting those stories. But if you have like any insights on what that process is like, or even like questions to think about as we're poking around in that space right now.
Right. I think one of the really just important dynamics to keep in mind is you want to look for examples of people loving an aspect of your product, not like a small number of people loving things is better than a lot of people kind of liking something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you really want to find those like small, like even if they're small, if they're bigger, that's amazing. But those small instances of really like magical special things for people, and like pull on those threads and figure out who those people are and why they had such a good time, and just try to make that happen more and more and more. It's the bar for the product being successful is very high. So you have to really be like treasure hunting for those moments and focus on those, and not and almost not like falsely encouraging yourself around the lukewarm positive experiences people are having.
Right.
For sure. And I think that's because we're still in the development, heavy into the prototyping development phase. We'll probably have more questions later on, but I think that we're good for now. I think we're just working away at it. So
yes,
that's awesome. Cool. I mean, yeah, I'd love to stay in touch. I would.
That'd be amazing.
Basically, like a customer. Too.
Especially,
yeah, maybe you're the one of those stories that you really,
yes, for sure.
Cool.
Awesome.
And I know also just like technically think about the power supply stuff too. That's
100%.
Yeah, I've been
100%.
eyeballs deep in that for sure.
Yeah,
awesome.
You just don't understand why it's such a big problem. But it is.
But yeah.
For
sure.
So that's like the second layer. Maybe 2020 Hackaday prize. We're coming in on that power supply. Yes, but you'll be one of the first to know. And especially if you're interested in being a beta tester at all, then
sign me up. Definitely.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cool. All right, thank you guys. We'll go on to Sonny and Marcos from Axiom.
Hi, Tyler.
Marcos.
Well, we are here with Sonny, and I think you said you took a look at our project.
I did.
So, well, Axiom is a motor controller. So it takes a high voltage battery from a car, for example, and it is able to control a very large motor, like those you find in modern electric cars. And it comes with a very good timing because there are millions of electric cars on the road and thousands of electric car batteries that are dying, but the motors are in perfect condition. So there are a bunch of hackers and enthusiasts that really want to make a second use of those motors. And from them we can we can provide to them a way to drive those motors, which is only half of our customer base, because we can leverage their enthusiasm, their presence in the forums, and how willing they are to make their system run, and that it's a great publicity for us, which lets us reach a bigger market, or more interesting market for us, which is the bigger companies, because the business-to-business approach, it's better for us because we are an engineering team. So that is roughly what is Axiom about. It's a motor controller for big stuff. And I wanted to ask you, now that I know you took a look at the project, what is your first thought about how are we doing here?
Right. Yeah, and I guess I understand at a conceptual level how the motors are typically driven, but I haven't like attempted to implement a system on a project recently, so I don't know kind of what other motor controllers are out there and their specific strengths and weaknesses. So I feel like the actual like what other resources are out there today, I'm less familiar with. You'll have to educate me a little bit. But as I understand it too, your module doesn't have any of the power electronics in it. It's really focused on like generating the three-phase waveforms from a digital signal, right?
Yeah, at this moment, we are sending to beta testers only the control board. But to certain customers that are rather big businesses, we are providing them with the full controller.
Got it.
Which includes the power station. It's a full app controller.
Right.
Which is what we plan to sell next year. We are testing and validating all that design. Because
so can you understand, just for the controller itself, how does it change from a lower power system to one of these higher power systems that you're looking at? I understand the basic stepping down from the high battery voltage, but beyond that, like how else functionally does the controller need to change when you get to a higher power system?
You basically need very big switches, large IGBTs. You need much more silicon.
Right.
And
that's typically in the power stage, though, right?
Sorry?
That's usually in the power stage, though.
Exactly. And in the control board, you really need protections, because if a small motor controller fails, it won't kill anyone. But we can have a fault of, I don't know, a megawatt during a very brief period of time. But we have to manage that in a safe way. So that is critical for our product. And we have very few, there is few competition at this power level. They are very, very expensive, and they are rather big companies. So we can take advantage of that. Our company is small and agile, and we are available to provide a very close service and customer service.
Right.
So that is basically it. I know Sonny wanted to ask you.
It's actually a good time for me to jump in, because you mentioned one of the challenges that we have on the Axiom project is when you scale to the size that we're at, the power levels that we're at, the margin of error, I mean, it shrinks dramatically. That's why there's very few players in this field. And we take that very seriously. And our background, my background as well, is in commercial and military aircraft, where mission critical is everything. Failure is not an option, and the design philosophy and the actual hardware and firmware design, it's intense on how to actually know all of your failure modes, how to design in reassurance into the design, and how to prove it both on the bench but also analytically. We've done that with Axiom, so because we happen to have that background in our team, and so we've managed to create a product that can be highly reliable, which is critical at this power level. The smallest mistake creates a big fire. One big fire and your company's done. So we take it really seriously. But my question is, how do we translate that kind of thought to an investor group of some sort? Because if I were in their shoes looking at our project, one of my concerns would be like, well, you want to drive a vehicle. There's a lot of liability on that. How do we know your product is safe? Now, we have our own beta testers, our own product, our own design assurance. How do we communicate to investor groups that we manage liability, that we know what we're doing?
Right. That's to start with. That's probably not going to be their major concern. They're going to want to know that you have a product that people want to buy first. So that's, I think, having demonstrating the value in the use cases. That's what's really going to make or break the company and justify its existence.
You're right. I'm too far into the details.
And it 100% must, with the customers, it has to be reliable. You're exactly right. All of those safety problems are table stakes, right? It has to meet that bar. But that doesn't, like a bad product that nobody wants to buy that's totally safe is not valuable and not a thing you should build a company around. So the bigger question, I think, is that you've identified like an underserved market need. Where there's this product that offers value in these applications that people want to buy, and that's like going to be the main thing people want to hear. And then they're going to
people reach out to us from different industries that we're really curious about because we weren't anticipating it. We have turbo generator customers their application is very high RPMs, much higher than an electric vehicle. Well, that's unique for us. That's awesome. We have other customers that have really high performance HVAC systems, the heating and cooling systems. Like, we're designing for a car. Why are you putting this in a heating and cooling system?
Right.
Well, our product is open source. That's a huge value to them. Plus, it's very high performance and very high reliability for their application. That was critical.
Right.
So, like you say, we're finding people that have are interested in the product, or they're finding us actually.
Right.
It's kind of fun for us.
Yep. I think just in very technical terms, there's sort of validation and verification and the difference between those two things. And there's validating your features and your specs that are all about, it's not necessarily about engineering them right, but it's like we're defining features that will be really valuable to somebody, and we're finding proof points that that's the case. And verification is all about demonstrating functionality that you've achieved those specs from an engineering perspective, and that they're implemented and reliable. I think to start with, people really want to hear that the thing you're building is validated and has good specs that people care about. And then the second step, it's more about did we follow through on those?
Show something that's interesting for a customer, how we solve it, and why they really love it.
Yeah, it's the difference between like building the right product and building the product right. You want to show that you're building the right product.
Okay.
And I think definitely check some of those I think the tendencies to over engineer something. That's I think the background in those never fail high reliability systems is a very important background. The other edge to that sword though is that you can sometimes spend a lot of time engineering a thing that's either over engineered, that could have been differently engineered, or that it took a long time engineering something that nobody wanted to buy. And so any ways that you can answer those questions first to kind of set the bounds of your problem and what you're engineering around, right? Just don't overlook that step.
Okay.
Well, tell that to a customer that, like yesterday, he used our controller in a bike, but it was a total hack, super fun. They use this in a bike with 700 amps. It was
way
crazy.
beyond our spec limit, and it still worked.
And it's it's still
engineering.
I was terrified because we didn't go so far with this build, but yeah, that was the other extreme of the safety assurance.
Right. And it feels like that whole message.
Well, okay, Taylor.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, I think for me, that whole message too is really supported once you do include the power electronics as well. So it's good to hear that you guys are working in that direction, because it feels like with just the controller, the change from like lower power systems to higher power systems is still significant, but not as valuable as incorporating the power electronics as well too. Then it just becomes this magic turnkey thing that's super robust, can work with.
You're right. Yeah, the full up controller is where all the value is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Thank you very much, Taylor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. We're ahead of schedule. This is the first in these sessions for me. This will be good, though. We'll have some time at the end for group discussion. All right. Aram and Shushanik.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh,
Hi.
okay. So some quick brief introduction. Bicon is a device that converts your bicycle to electric and back in seconds without any tools or skills. You just snap it to the wheel of your bicycle, it converts it to electric assist, you remove it, you have your regular bicycle again. And with Bicon, we are trying to solve a transportation issue in urban environments where there are challenges both on the road with traffic, but also in homes with lack of space, because if you want to have your regular bicycle, sometimes you want to have your regular bicycle, and sometimes you want to have an electric bicycle. And for example, in many parks, you cannot ride an electric bicycle. It's just prohibited. There are some other regulations as well. So Bicon allows a person to use a bicycle that he already uses both as regular and electric. And so we were designing Bicon to make it both practical and elegant without losing its simplicity. And one of the biggest challenges was to design the device in a way that it could fit the wheel without losing the functionality, but also keeping it really simple. We've spent, I believe, last couple of years also designing for manufacturing, so it would be easily reproducible and really inexpensive in manufacturing. And I think we solved both of those challenges. We are ready to start manufacturing of our first initial batch and go on from there. And so that's basically the background. And I actually wanted to ask you, Tyler, a couple of questions. So first question would be kind of obvious one. What is the thing which you would like to see in this project which we don't have yet? You know?
That's great. And I also had the benefit of seeing the device in person.
Right.
Which was really great. Didn't get a chance to see it on a bike, but I was able to hold the device. Actually, just to start, a couple questions that just to clarify how the system works for me too. Where does it actually engage with the bike? It's directly on the cartridge, right, of the wheel, not on the chain itself?
No, it sits on the sprocket, on the largest sprocket of the cassette.
Yep.
And that's the one point, and there is just a second point of it's kind of semi-attachment. We use that point as counter to counter the torque, you know. So
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Got it. Okay, so and then that will fit. That assumes a certain like gear ratio that you're attaching to most bikes will have.
Yeah. So you tell me how many teeth you have on your largest sprocket, and I'll ship you a device which fits your.
Got it.
Your sprocket.
Got it. Yeah. And then how does the transmission work so that the wheel can still be free spinning when it's not applying power?
So actually, since it is attached to the cassette, it's not the wheel can spin without cassette being spun. You know what I mean? Because cassette and a wheel, they are not in direct contact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is no resistance. If you don't apply power on pedals, you just freewheel. There is no.
Yep. Got it. Yep. I think for some people, just building up more material on the site that kind of just explains how the device works, and you have the one video of you attaching it to the bike that's helpful. But I think just more explanation around how the system works is helpful. Cool. Well, I think I'm not sure if you heard me, but I was just saying I think a little bit more kind of like marketing material around explaining how the system works would be helpful for people. I think some of that, if I was putting on my like naive customer hat, some of that was maybe not obvious, or I was curious to learn more about
it. Okay.
The other one is, I mean, the system does require an external battery pack as well.
Correct.
And I think most of the time you're using like some water bottle kind of located.
Right.
So yeah, I think I understand that. You know, that I think could be helpful for people to understand a little bit better as well.
Okay.
And then intuitively, how would you compare or describe the amount of power that the device delivers? Like if you were like comparing it to the power of some other electrical assist bikes that people may have used, is it about the same, a little bit less?
Yeah, it's slightly more than other comparable systems.
So if people have been on like a jump bike or something like that, it should feel about the same, maybe a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool too. I mean, I think that kind of helps people get an intuitive understanding of how much power the system delivers, because it's relatively, in a nice way, elegant looking now, and I think people might just underestimate how much power they get out of it too. So even maybe showing two people pedaling from start on with another third-party bike in yours could be interesting, or just having some other description around how does it feel, it could be really valuable.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that maybe as far as get back to your original question around what maybe what I wish it had. I guess if I'm just thinking from a consumer perspective, I'm thinking a lot about how it sort of fits into my routine. I think like I'm wondering about like how I would take the battery pack on and off, how often I would need to charge it, if I need to take the device on and off, if I'm parking my bike outside, like how secure it is. So I think all those are sort of open questions for me around how annoying or practical it would be in my routine.
Right.
So
all right.
Another security feature where I didn't feel like I had to unattach it from my bike if I parked it outside, could be nice.
Yeah, we will be offering a locking system, which will basically lock the device to the wheel or to the frame. We're choosing which way we will go. But yeah, there will be locking system. Maybe we will see if our customers are willing to pay for GPS trackable system, where the lock has GPS inside. We are not here yet 100% sure if people really want it, but it's a possibility too.
Yeah, that one makes a little bit less sense to me because you're already telling a story of it being stolen at that point, and you're already in a bad position. You're telling me, you're telling me that my experience is going to be better when my bike gets stolen. That's just not a fun thing to imagine. Right?
Okay.
I'd rather not get stolen in the first place and just focus on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing we wanted actually to offer to customers, and still we see interest in that area, but we're not yet 100% sure, is because the device is so easy to install and remove, we could offer subscription to our customer with service. Whatever happens, we're there, and we can ship it basically overnight. And we can replace the unit, we can ship it back overnight. That's one of the values which we see, or our customers see in the product, but we're not 100% sure if that's the one of the things. You know what I mean?
Can you talk some more about that? Like what the situations would be that you would use that? Like if I'm traveling to a different city and I'm going to rent a bike, and I want to make it electric.
No, so for example, with hardware product, usually you want to touch it, right? So here's a scenario: before you buy it, you want to touch it. With us, I can ship you the product, demo product. You can install it on your bicycle. You don't need to remove a wheel as you would need to do usually. You don't need to modify your bicycle. It's just to touch it, use it for a few days. If you like it, you place an order. If you don't like it,
Okay, that makes sense. It's more of a lower cost customer acquisition.
Yes, exactly. Another scenario could be but that could be with, for example, bike sharing companies, because actually we can provide it to a bike sharing company, and we can take care of maintenance of the entire system, you know. So basically they would maintain the bicycle, we would maintain all the rest of the stuff.
Yep, that's interesting. It sounds like a lot of operational cost and work for you to participate in the bike maintenance, but it could be interesting, yeah, to look at. But I think that is really interesting on the kind of customer acquisition demo side. Just the fact that you can really lower the barrier to try and potentially, you know, have some model where they're not, you know, a customer doesn't need to pay for the whole system up front.
Right.
And the thing that Aaron described previously was like extended warranty thing, you know. It makes it easier because people can just ship it. It's small, so we will maintain it and we'll replace it if it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's nice. Are you imagining selling the battery as part of the kit as well?
Yes. We will be offering the battery, and people will be able to purchase the battery separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then what is the charging story for the battery? Does it have like a frame that comes off, or how do you unattach it to charge?
So you can use your regular water bottle holder. Cool. You just snap the battery in there, and there is a short wire which goes from the battery to the device. We will provide cable management, simple cable management means there, and that's all what it is. So whenever you need, you can actually take the battery with you to the office, charge it. It's like laptop type charger, and connect it back when you pick up your bicycle.
That's great. Cool. And how are you guys doing? This kind of separate question. How are you guys doing on weatherproofness or, you know, water ingress with the device?
Yeah. So for one, we use a timing belt in the transmission. Secondly, all the electronics and all the sensitive stuff is waterproof. We use some special electronic type compound, you know, just to waterproof it, and it works fine.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And which side is the connector waterproof to the battery, or where is that connection made?
So both sides they have a waterproof connector.
Great. Cool.
Yeah,
that sounds great. No, yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Okay. Thanks for that, but we're not done yet because I have another question. So another question is related to the copycats in China. You know, I think it's probably one of the common pain points for many companies or many projects. We do have patent provisional at this point on the system. We think that our customers will buy our product not because it's cheap, but because it is what it is, because of all the features which we have and so on. But the question is, what should we do, and how can we protect ourselves, you know, against copycats?
Right. Yeah, it's difficult. It is difficult. There's lots of different strategies. You know, if your features are supported purely in hardware, it is relatively easy to copy that. So even if, you know, it's hard to maintain best in class features if it's you know, if those are fully implemented in hardware. And as a small company, the patent is you know, helpful to have, but you're like realistically not, you know, probably going to be able to litigate your way out of a competitor. That's just going to be expensive and slow enough that it will be, that's we'll have limited success with that as a small company.
Yeah.
Right. So I think some of the aspects of brand and community, or if there's a software layer for motor control, things like that you can tell a story around, either that show up in reviews that people try some side by side, and you develop a lot of content for yours being the recommended brand by experts. I think that can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We do have.
I think the whole story of getting one to try out and be able to send back, like that I can imagine being compelling, where you may be the only company to be able to offer that, and the other companies maybe are seen as knockoffs, but you're forced to pay for the whole thing up front because you don't really know that there's a company that you can swap it back out with.
Okay. Actually, we do have an algorithm which is kind of proprietary to us, but the point is that maybe someone can build similar product without that algorithm. It's not going to be work the same way, it's not going to be as smooth, as intuitive when you write it, and it's going to be cheaper. I don't know if it makes sense, but the thought which we have is basically some people, they prefer to buy a knockoff of iPhone, right? But some people, they're willing to pay the money to get the real quality of the iPhone, So we're telling to ourselves at the moment, like, okay, if somebody wants to pay lower price for something similar, he's probably not one of our customers anyways.
It depends. That story is always really complicated. It really depends on the level of value and whether it's perceived, for
okay.
People, right? It's not really a question of is one better than the other, but how much better and how much does it cost to get there,
Right.
So it's complicated, especially when you start bringing brand into it too. People will pay a lot for a brand name because of what it says about them as a user and what they're aspiring to. So as a startup, you may not have they may know you as a brand, but it may not carry as much value until you've built a reputation over years, and kind of what that says about your customers.
Okay. All right. I think I don't have any more questions at this point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tyler.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. I wanted to give a little time if anybody had feedback for each other or wanted to say anything else, any last thoughts. Otherwise, I can move on to announcements and sort of general Hackaday Prize recommendations.
I have a quick question for Bicon, and it comes from our own project. The first thing that the customers always ask us for is more power. Even though a member under our team broke the world record for the fastest front-wheel drive car in the quarter mile, they want more power. So my question for Bicon is, do you sell at different power levels, or can I put 2 on one bike, this sort of thing?
Yeah, so the problem with that is regulation. There are some regulations which limit the power levels in different countries, even in different states. Those regulations are different, so we go by those regulations. We could get more power from the same motor, we just pump more current. We have pretty good cooling of MOSFETs there, so yeah, we could get it no problem, but we limit it because of regulations.